At the inheritance meeting in our family home in Charlotte, my older brother Preston stood up like he owned the room, tapped his glass, and announced with the biggest grin, Mom and Dad decided to leave all 8 rental properties in North Carolina to me. Haley, sorry, you get nothing. The room exploded. Cheers, whistles. Someone even shouted, finally. Cousins clapped him on the back. His fiancée, Courtney, beamed like she'd just won the lottery. And Mom dabbed her eyes with that proud little tear. I didn't clap. I didn't even blink. I just looked straight at Dad and said, calm as ever, Dad, you forgot one thing, didn't you? His fork froze halfway to his mouth. Preston's smile vanished. Courtney stopped mid-sip. 30 people suddenly went dead silent. You could hear the AC humming. And in that single second, every single person in that room knew the script they'd rehearsed for months was about to burn. Before I tell you exactly what my dad forgot and how the rest of that afternoon turned the whole family upside down, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from tonight. I always like knowing I'm not the only one who sat at a table full of people who swore they loved you right before they showed you what they really think. Hit that like button if you've ever had to smile while your entire family cheered for your downfall, because trust me, what happened next made every single one of them regret clapping so fast. Now, let me take you back to how we got here. My name is Haley Brennan, and if you'd met my family before that inheritance meeting, you'd probably have thought we were the perfect North Carolina success story. Big house in Myers Park, BMWs in the driveway, Christmas card smiles every December. But those pictures never showed the quiet hierarchy that ruled everything behind closed doors. Preston has always been the son everyone orbited around. From the moment he came home from the hospital, people noticed him first, listened to him longest, forgave him fastest. Little League star, high school basketball captain, the son who stayed local and helped manage Grandma Dorothy's rental properties the second he graduated. Every family barbecue ended with someone slapping his back, telling him he was the future of the Brennan name. He soaked it up like it was oxygen. I learned early that I lived in the shade he cast. Teachers mixed up our names until Preston corrected them with a laugh. Birthdays meant his cake first, his gifts opened loudest, his stories retold at the table while mine stayed folded inside me. When I asked for extra math tutoring in middle school, Mom sighed that money was tight because Preston needed new basketball shoes. When I got accepted to Duke University on a full scholarship, Dad's only comment was, guess someone has to leave Charlotte. So I did. The day I turned 22, I packed everything I owned into my beat-up Honda Accord and drove north on I-85 until Charlotte was just a glow in the rearview mirror. Boston gave me the first real breath I'd ever taken without someone else's shadow on my face. I started as a junior analyst at a commercial real estate firm downtown, crunching numbers on apartment complexes and shopping centers, learning how deeds work, how trusts work, how ownership can be moved quietly and permanently when someone knows what they're doing. I still came home, but only when Grandma Dorothy asked. She was the one person who never compared me to Preston. Never asked why I couldn't just be happy here like your brother. She'd sit on her screened porch overlooking Lake Norman, silver hair twisted up with a clip, and listen to me talk about cap rates and lease abstracts like they were poetry. Some weekend she'd hand me the keys to one of the rental houses and tell me to walk through it alone, feel the weight of real ownership, even if nobody else knew it yet. Those visits were my oxygen too. She never once called me the smart one or the independent one, the way relatives did when they wanted to sound nice. She just looked at me, really looked, and said things like, you see things clearly, Haley. That's rarer than money. When I left on Sunday nights, she'd press a cold sweet tea into my hand and remind me the drive was only 7 hours, not a lifetime. Everyone else stopped noticing when I was in the room. Phone calls from Mom shrank to texts about holidays. Dad only called if Preston needed help closing a deal on one of the properties. I became the daughter who did her own thing, which in our family meant the one nobody had to invest in anymore. I didn't hate Preston for it. Hate would have required energy I refused to give. I just accepted the rules the way you accept humidity in August. You dress lighter, you keep moving, you don't waste breath complaining. Boston promoted me to senior property analyst 2 years ago. I bought a small condo in Back Bay, filled it with plants that actually lived because nobody else was there to forget watering them, and built a life where my value wasn't measured against someone else's spotlight. The only tether left was Grandma Dorothy. Every visit, she grew a little thinner, a little quieter, but her eyes stayed sharp. She started asking more questions about trusts, about how assets could be protected from people who love too loudly and manage too loosely. I answered honestly because she was the one person who never used my knowledge to prop someone else up. She passed quietly 13 months ago. I drove home for the funeral, stood in the back of the church while Preston delivered the eulogy. Everyone cried. I just felt her absence settle into my bones like a promise I didn't fully understand yet. That's who I was the day I walked back into the house in Charlotte for the inheritance meeting. 31 calm, carrying 9 years of distance and one very old woman's unshakable faith in me. But what nobody knew, not Mom, not Dad, not Preston with his cocky grin, was that 3 years before Grandma Dorothy died, everything had already changed. And I was the only one who knew about it. 3 years ago, everything changed without anyone knowing. Grandma Dorothy called me on a Tuesday evening and asked me to come down the following weekend. No explanation, just that she needed my eyes on something. When I pulled into her driveway in Davidson, she was already waiting on the porch with 2 folders and a pot of coffee strong enough to strip paint. She didn't waste time on small talk. She slid the first folder across the table and told me to read bank statements, rental income logs, expense reports for the 8 properties. The numbers didn't lie. Over the previous 18 months, more than $400,000 in rent money had vanished into categories labeled maintenance, emergency repairs, and management fees. Receipts were missing or photocopied so many times they were illegible. The handwriting on the few that existed matched Preston's. She watched me flip pages, her mouth a thin line. I gave him access because he swore he wanted to learn the business, she said. Turns out he learned how to bleed it instead. I asked the obvious question, why not confront him? She shook her head. Because your parents would defend him. Say boys will be boys. Promise he'll pay it back someday. By the time someday comes, there'll be nothing left to pay back. That was the moment she opened the second folder. Inside were draft documents, a revocable living trust naming her as trustee for life, and upon her passing, me as sole successor trustee and beneficiary of every single rental property. Plus 8 quitclaim deeds ready to transfer title immediately. All she needed was my signature and 2 witnesses. She explained it like she was reading the weather. A living trust avoids probate, keeps everything private. No public filings until she's gone. Quitclaim deeds move ownership instantly and quietly. Once recorded, they're ironclad. The notary she trusted was coming Monday morning. No lawyers in the family would ever see the paperwork unless she wanted them to. I asked why me. She looked out at the water and answered without hesitation. Because you understand what these houses actually are. 32 families who pay rent on time so their kids can stay in the same school. You won't gamble that away on boats or parties or whatever new toy catches his eye this month. I tried to argue that Preston would lose his mind when he found out. She cut me off. He doesn't get to find out until it's too late to undo. That's the whole point. We spent the rest of the weekend going over every detail. She walked me through the trust language, showed me where to sign, made sure I understood that once the deeds were recorded at the county, the houses were legally mine whether anyone liked it or not. She even had me initial every page so there could never be a claim I didn't know what I was agreeing to. Monday morning, the notary arrived at 9 sharp. We signed in the dining room while the ceiling fan clicked overhead. Grandma Dorothy's hand didn't shake once. When the notary left, she poured us both a finger of bourbon, even though it wasn't noon yet, clinked her glass against mine, and said, "Now it's done. And now we shut up about it." She made me swear on her parents' graves that I would never breathe a word until the day came when someone tried to take what was no longer theirs to give. I gave her my word. We burned the extra copies in the outdoor fireplace that night and watched the smoke curl up into the Carolina pines. For the next 2.5 years, nothing looked different on the surface. Preston kept collecting rent checks and bragging about his portfolio. Mom and Dad kept praising how responsible he'd become. I kept driving down from Boston every couple of months, checking on tenants when Grandma asked, fixing what actually needed fixing instead of inventing reasons to spend. Nobody noticed the county records now listed the owner of record as Haley Brennan, because nobody ever bothered to look. Grandma's health started slipping faster after that. She spent more days in bed, less on the porch, but every time I visited, she asked the same question, "Still our secret?" I always answered yes. It became our ritual. 2 words that meant everything. The last time I saw her alive, she gripped my hand so hard her ring cut into my skin. "Remember," she whispered, "paper beats promises every single time." Then she smiled like someone who just won a bet nobody else knew was on the table. 7 months ago, right after Grandma's funeral, Mom called and asked me to stay an extra day. "We need to talk about the properties," she said, voice soft like she was breaking bad news. "Everyone's coming to the house tomorrow." I knew what that meant. The whole family circling the estate before the will was even read. I almost said no, but something in her tone sounded final, so I agreed. The next afternoon, the dining room looked like a board meeting. Dad sat at the head, sleeves rolled up, legal pad in front of him. Preston lounged to his right, legs stretched out, already acting like the new landlord. Mom kept refilling coffee nobody drank. A stack of documents waited in the center, crisp and official. Dad pushed the top page toward me. "It's just a simple waiver," he started. "We're keeping everything in the family, but to avoid any confusion down the road, we need you to sign that you're not expecting a share of the rentals." I glanced at the title, Waiver of Inheritance Interest, Real Property. 8 addresses listed neatly below. My pulse stayed steady. I'd seen worse surprises. Mom jumped in before I could speak. "Sweetheart, it's only paperwork. Preston's staying here, handling everything day to day. It makes sense for him to have full control. This just keeps things peaceful." Preston smirked, spinning a pen between his fingers. "Yeah, Haley. Nobody wants lawyers involved. Sign it and we're good." I slid the paper back an inch. "I'm not signing anything." The room temperature dropped. Dad's eyebrows shot up. Mom's hand froze on the coffee pot. Dad recovered first. "Come on, don't be difficult. This isn't about taking anything away from you. It's about clarity." I looked him straight in the eye. "I won't sign away what Grandma intended for me." Silence. Preston stopped spinning the pen. Mom tried the emotional route. "Your grandmother wanted the family taken care of. She'd hate to see us fighting." I didn't blink. "She's not here to see anything, is she? And I'm not fighting. I'm just not giving up my rights." Dad leaned forward, voice lowering the way it used to when I was 10 and late for curfew. "Haley, we're trying to do this the easy way. Preston's put years into those houses." I almost laughed. Years of putting money into his own pocket, maybe. Preston finally spoke, irritation cracking through the casual act. "You live in Boston. You don't even want them. Why make this hard?" "Because they're not yours to give," I said. Mom's eyes welled up on cue. "We just want everyone happy. After everything we've been through. Losing Mom. Classic move. Bring up the recent death. Make refusal feel cruel." I stood up. "I'm sorry you're upset, but I'm not waiving anything." Dad slapped the table hard enough to rattle the cups. "This is ridiculous. You're acting like we're stealing from you." I picked up my keys. "No, I'm acting like someone who knows exactly what's hers." Preston stood too, face red. "You're being selfish." Typical. I walked to the door and paused just long enough to deliver one line. "Selfish is thinking you can erase someone's wishes with a signature because it's convenient." Mom called after me, voice cracking. "Haley, please don't leave like this." I didn't turn around. "I'll see you when you're ready to respect what Grandma actually wanted." The screen door slammed behind me. I heard Preston mutter something about me always playing the victim, Dad telling him to calm down, Mom starting to cry for real this time. I got in my car, rolled the windows down, and let the warm Carolina air hit my face. The entire 7-hour drive back to Boston, they spent the next weeks convinced I was throwing a tantrum. Group texts about healing and moving forward as a family. Dad left 2 voicemails that got progressively angrier. Preston sent a single message, "Grow up." I didn't reply to any of it. Instead, I printed fresh copies of the recorded deeds, filed them in a fireproof folder, and waited. I knew they were busy drafting whatever story made them the heroes and me the problem child who couldn't let go of a grudge. They had no idea the grudge wasn't mine to let go of. 2 weeks ago, the invitation arrived in my mailbox in Boston. Thick cream cardstock, gold border, formal lettering, celebration of Dorothy Brennan's legacy. Inside was a note in Mom's perfect cursive, "Please join us to honor Grandma's wishes and celebrate the future of the family properties. Saturday at 3. We've missed you." I knew exactly what it was, the victory lap they thought they'd earned. The group chat exploded the same day. Preston posted a selfie in front of one of the rental houses with the caption, "Big things coming for the Brennan portfolio." Courtney commented with heart emojis, "So proud of my future husband." I didn't reply. But I cleared my weekend and packed the rolling suitcase I usually take on business trips. The living room was packed when Preston finally stood up. Champagne flute raised high, voice carrying over every conversation like he'd rehearsed it for weeks. "I just want to thank Mom and Dad for trusting me with Grandma Dorothy's legacy," he began, flashing that practiced grin. "As of today, all 8 rental properties are officially under my name. The family tradition continues, stronger than ever." Glasses lifted. Cheers rippled through the room. Someone shouted, "To Preston." A cousin started clapping, and the rest followed until the sound bounced off the walls. I waited until the noise peaked, then rolled the suitcase forward, wheels clicking across the hardwood. Every head turned. The clapping died mid-air. I stopped beside the coffee table, clicked the latches, and flipped the lid open. 30 pairs of eyes locked on the neat stacks inside. Dad found his voice first. "Haley, what is this?" I didn't answer him yet. I pulled out the first quitclaim deed, held it up so the notary seal caught the light, and laid it face up on the table. Then the second. Third. 8 in total, each bearing Grandma Dorothy's bold signature and the raised seal of the Mecklenburg County Clerk. Next came the Revocable Living Trust, thick and bound, successor trustee section highlighted in calm yellow. I placed it on top like a period at the end of a sentence. Only then did I look at Dad. "You really forgot this existed, didn't you?" The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might drop. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Preston stared at the papers like they were written in another language. Mr. Kimball, the family attorney, stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. He picked up the trust first, flipped to the signature page, then to the schedule of assets listing every address. His fingers moved faster as he cross-checked the quitclaim deeds against the county stamps. He looked up slowly. "These are recorded," he said, voice flat. "All of them. 3 years ago. Haley is the legal owner of record. There is no probate interest left to distribute." You could hear ice melting in forgotten glasses. Preston lunged for the documents. "That's impossible. Grandma was sick. She didn't know what she was signing." Mr. Kimball didn't hand them over. "I notarized similar documents for Dorothy myself. The handwriting matches. The notary is licensed and present in the county records. These are binding." I finally spoke again, calm and clear. Grandma knew exactly what she was doing. She made sure the houses went to someone who would protect the tenants, not bleed them. Dad tried to stand, sat back down hard. "She never told us." "No," I said. "She didn't." Preston's face twisted. "You hid this the whole time. You let us plan everything." "I let you plan what you thought was yours," I cut in. "Grandma asked me to wait until someone tried to take what she'd already given away. Today seemed like the day." Mr. Kimball closed the trust with a soft thud that sounded final. "Legally, the matter is settled. The properties belong to Haley. End of discussion." Aunts shifted in their chairs. Cousins exchanged glances. The property manager who'd been congratulating Preston 5 minutes earlier now looked like he wanted to disappear into the carpet. Courtney's glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor, champagne spraying across shoes and ankles. She didn't bend to pick up the pieces. She just stared at me, mouth open, then at Preston, then back at the papers. Without a word, she grabbed her purse, pushed past 2 cousins, and walked straight out the front door. The screen slammed behind her. Nobody went after her. Preston's face went from red to purple. He snatched the living trust from Mr. Kimball's hands and started flipping pages wildly. "This is fake," he shouted. "She forged it. Grandma was on painkillers the last year. She didn't know what day it was." Mr. Kimball took the document back, calm as ever. He turned to the signature page and began reading aloud, slow and deliberate. Article 4, Section 2, upon the death of Dorothy Brennan, all real property listed in Schedule A shall pass immediately to successor trustee Haley Brennan, free of probate. He kept going, voice steady, every clause another nail. When he reached the notary acknowledgement and the recorded dates, Preston's yelling faded into heavy breathing. Mom crumpled onto the couch, hands over her face, shoulders shaking. Dad looked 10 years older in 10 seconds. He slid to his knees right there on the rug, reaching toward me like I was the last solid thing in the room. "Haley, honey, please. We didn't know. We can fix this. We'll redo everything. Just don't take it all away from your brother." His voice cracked on the last word. Tears ran down his cheeks. Real ones this time. Mom reached for my hand, mascara streaking. "We thought we were doing what was best for the family. We thought Preston needed it more. You're doing so well on your own." I pulled my hand back before she could grab it. This was Grandma's decision, not mine. I closed the suitcase, latched it, and set the handle upright. Mr. Kimball cleared his throat. "I'll prepare the necessary notices to all tenants and financial institutions first thing Monday. Ownership transfer is already complete. This is purely administrative." Preston made a sound like a wounded animal. Mom wailed into a throw pillow. Dad just stared at the floor. I picked up my keys. 3 months later, the dust had settled, but nothing was the same. Preston's name disappeared from every lease, every bank account, every vendor contract. The IRS notice arrived the week after the meeting. Turns out years of writing off personal vacations as property inspections finally caught up. He's still paying off the penalty on a payment plan that will follow him for years. Mom and Dad sold the big house and moved into a 2-bedroom condo with a view of a parking lot. They stopped hosting holidays. I stayed in Boston. The rental income covers everything and then some. I bought 2 more properties last quarter, smaller deals, but mine from day one. Some nights I sit on my balcony, city lights below, and think about Grandma Dorothy's last words. Paper beats promises every single time. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. It never did. The only thing that ever protected me was an old woman who saw the future clearly enough to put it in writing, and a promise I kept when it mattered most.